Shut up and sit down.
Hello again, welcome everybody to another edition of the Rural Report. In today's episode, we're going to talk about bugging in versus bugging out. Now, a couple quick things before we jump into this is going to be check us out on our Facebook page by going to Facebook and searching for The Rural Report. Make sure that you like and subscribe this channel as it helps us so that we can grow. And the YouTube algorithm that likes to block all the prepping channels. So make sure you go hit that bell for notification. And then also on a side note, I want to give a shout out to one of the members who has sent me this hat right here. Let's see if I can do that right there. Off grid. That's awesome. So we'll go ahead and wear that for today's episode. So thank you for that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this one. All right. So I have written down a list of 10 things that we will go over on a bug in versus bug out scenario. And this is in no particular order, and you can feel free to stop or pause this, go back and rewatch. So that way you can jot these down if you want to. This is just a few generalized things to get you started. So that way, while things are relatively calm, you can go through with yourself or your friends, family, mag, tribe, what have you, and go through each of these 10 things. You can add things that are relevant to you so that way you can do if you are going to bug in or bug out. So the first thing is going to be physical fitness and health. Now, you're going to have to be extremely honest with yourself as you self-evaluate, and it's going to do this throughout the entire list. For you, are you physically capable of making your trip to your bug out location? If you have a 50-mile, walk, can you physically do it? Is you and your family one of the active families that you take your dog out on the nightly walk? Everybody's in sports or does some sort of running or workout. Then that might be an easy thing for you. Versus other people, like maybe a single mom with very young twins, making a 50-mile walk might be almost out of the question. Same with somebody that's extremely elderly, in a wheelchair, already injured or sick. You have to take all that into an account before you decide, are you staying or are you going? Number 2 on the list, a place to go. Now this one might seem obvious, but when you go to number 2, it is, do you have a place that you own or a friend or family owns that you are allowed to be there under normal circumstances? Is this a place that you go to, at the very minimum, probably at least once, twice a year? You're familiar with it. The people around there are familiar that you are in that area, at least on occasion, that you are a familiar face. If you look at it, and I know that rules kind of go out the window in an SHTF situation, but if I own 50 acres and you stumble into a barn, way out back, that's going to be your bug out location, I'm not going to care if there's rule of law or not. You're on my property and I'm going to defend my property. So you got to make sure that your location is your location. Number 3 is going to be skills and knowledge. And again, you have to be very honest with yourself. So the first thing you want to do is you want to have intel. What happened? Is this event even survivable? If we're talking about something that's very localized, that is like a flood, very survivable. Are we talking about you live on a military base and you got 60 seconds until incoming? Maybe not as survivable. So you have a better chance of taping up some windows and hunkering down and hoping for the best versus going out into some radiological nightmare. But you also have to be brutally honest with yourself. Do you have the basic survival skills? Do you know how to fish, hunt, how to, purify water, how to do basic first aid, things like that? Those will be things that you're going to want to consider if you're going to stay or if you're going to go. Number 4 is going to be supplies and tools. Now, if you're bugging in, just about everything you have should be there. That's going to be anything from sewing for clothing repair. That's going to be medical, first aid. That's going to be food. That's going to be water. That's going to be building materials, self-defense, all that. That's going to be already at your house. Now, if you have a bug out location, it's a great idea to stock your bug out location with some of those supplies. So you need to make sure that when you are going to decide if you're going to bug in or bug out, is it going to be worth it leaving behind everything that you have already at your place to go to a place that maybe has very little to almost nothing and what you can carry on your back? So this is a risk reward pro con that you're going to have to weigh out for yourself. Number 5 is going to be proximity to the event. So you're going to have to know what happened, how close are you to it, your effectiveness of it. So if we're talking about, let's say, a wildfire, is the fire heading towards you? Is the smoke blowing in your direction? Maybe you are not affected where you are, but maybe the fire is going towards your bug out location. If you don't take things like this into consideration, you're actually putting yourself in more danger trying to get to your bug out location than just staying put. Or vice versa, you may try and stay put when the fire is heading towards you, but not your bug out location. So just a few things to consider. This is the first 5. Let's go ahead and do this next 5. Number 6 on our list is going to be extremely important yet often overlooked: the weather. Now, you can have some of the greatest trained people that is in the military with some of the greatest weaponry and the greatest plans and all that. And all that will completely be put on hold because of weather. The weather may be what your factor is on why you have to bug out. Maybe you have a hurricane coming. Maybe something like a dam broke and water's on its way. You have to take into account of what it is that's going on and how that's going to affect you. If it's very, very cold and you can stay where you are, great. If it's very, very cold, but your bug out location has a wood stove and you have a better chance there, that's a deciding factor. And so make sure that weather is going to be one of the main things that you have on your list. Moving on, number 7 is going to be long-term resources. Now, this one is going to be a little controversial because not every time that you bug out has to be a world-ending scenario or event. If you are, say, in Florida, there is a hurricane coming, then oftentimes you get, 1, 2, sometimes 3-day warning. So that way you can grab, the kids and the family and the dog, head up to see some family, and you can bug out for a few days. Make sure everything's safe, come back, pick up the pieces, and keep going with life. But if we're talking about a SHTF situation, then you need to decide where you are versus your bug out location. Which one is going to do better for you in the long term, resources wise? If you live in a major city, then you're not going to have the room that you need to grow food, the ability to hunt, the ability for, getting water and things like that. And your bug out location provides better long term resources for you to survive. So you have to make sure that you take that into account. Number 8 is help. I am one of the big advocates that you should never ever lone wolf a SHTF situation. You're going to need help, and you cannot do this alone. I've probably done a few videos on this. You're going to have to, sleep at some point in time. And when you sleep, that, takes down security. You're going to have to, go hunting. And while you do that, you might get injured. Who's going to take care of you? You might get sick. Who's going to take care of you? You can only do one thing at a time. So many hands make light work, and it gives fresh ideas. It gives a lot of different angles. It gives backups to backups that you can cross train each other and all that. So you have to decide when you're going to stay or go. Everybody that you know, for the most part, your friends, your family, your loved ones, your coworkers, neighbors, all that, they know where you live. And so in a bad scenario, if they need help, that's where they're going to go to try and find you. Now, it's going to go into a different one if you're going to bug out. You have to make sure that where you're going to bug out, who's going to be around there. Have you been out there enough that the people that live out there permanently, that homestead or live in that small community or what have you, do they recognize your face, your car? Do they know who you are, your friends, your family, whoever's coming down there? So that way, when everything's going awry, they don't just see you as another threat that, needs to be dealt with. So you need to make sure when it comes to something bad happening and you're going to have to ask for help, is it better to stay put and have the help there, or is it better to go because the help's better there? Now, number 9 on the list is going to be modes of transportation. Now, you should, in the prepping community, have redundancy. So you should probably have, your RV or your car, pickup truck, something like that. Then, if you get a flat tire, you run out of fuel, breakdown, anything along those lines. Maybe you have a bicycle on the back, a wagon, something like that, to where it'll help you get a little bit further. Maybe the wagon breaks, maybe the bicycle pops a chain, what have you. Now you're down to walking. Do you have comfortable shoes, boots, things like that, to where you can walk for a long distance at a time? Are you physically, able to do that? Do you have somebody that's coming with you that's going to be in a wheelchair or, a young infant or whatnot, to be able to make that trek where you're going to have to stop constantly? You have to remember, if you're traveling, it's not just about you. You might be able to walk 20 miles straight in one day, but if you're taking others with you, you may have to stop every hour. And so you have to make sure that your modes of transportation, that you take into account everybody that's going to be in the group, not just yourself. Now, number 10, and probably one of the other most important ones, is mentality. Because I see a lot of people that like to semi-role play and kind of LARP on this, where they just go out, spend a bunch of money on some cool, gear and gadgets and whatnot, and some clothing, and then they run around and they think it's a video game. And there's no reset on this. This is not going to be a weekend family camping trip. So you need to make sure that if you are talking about the worst, most extreme cases of total chaos and anarchy, the things that you're going to see, that your family is going to see, your kids, all that, the things that you're going to see and smell and witness and go through, and the amount of sheer terror and anxiety, it's going to be very, very tough on you mentally and on them mentally. And so it's not a thing to talk you out of bugging out, because there are scenarios that you absolutely must bug out. But it's one of the things that you need to make sure that you take into consideration. So with that, let's go ahead and put this all into a final thought. All right, so we just went down through the top 10 of a list that I have come up with. Now there's multiple other things that you can take away and add to that list. You need to figure out what works best for you, for your family, for your team, your mag, your tribe, what have you. So that way you can figure out what your line is. I know for me personally, most of my lists say if this happens, this is my attention getter. If step 2 happens, then that is putting the bags by the door. That's making sure everything's ready. That's heightened alert. And then number 3, red line, we're out. There's other things that might happen that skip, 1 and 2 that automatically go to 3. You see a lot of people that make the mistake on both sides of the spectrum on this. You're going to see people that which is the most common, this is my homestead, this is my castle, I've spent years, doing everything, I'm staying put. Well, it's fine and dandy, but there is scenarios where you're going to have to vacate, and you need to have a plan. Really, you need to have multiple plans. Then you have people that they say, well, I live in downtown Chicago or New York or whatnot, I can't stay put. Okay, I see your point, but not all scenarios require you. It might not be some world-ending catastrophe to where it's actually better to bug in. Now, sticking with that, even if you live in a major city, which I don't think it's a good idea to live in a major city right now, but it's beyond the point. For this, even if you live in a major city, you need to have your times put out and know that the more prepared you are with the more skill and knowledge and everything that you can get, the intel, the gear, the more that you can put together an entire package to where you invest in yourself and you invest in your future, the better chance you are regardless of where you're at. Now, you take and you look at different people of, this person has a lot of gear and a lot of knowledge and whatnot, and they live out here, versus this person has, the same thing, but they live in the city. You would tend to think that the person way out in the middle of nowhere is going to be better off, in which they probably are a little better off. But you can live in a suburb or a pretty large city as long as you know what you're doing. There's a lot of people out there that have different channels and whatnot on how to be in the preparedness community and be in the suburbs or a city. It can be done. But the one thing that I want you guys to remember is that when you take stuff like this into account, is that you're going to have to run through and kind of war game or scenario this out to where you have to remember there's going to be a lot of surprises and a lot of things that make you uncomfortable, and you cannot steer away from that. This is not going to be the thing to where you are prepping for A, B, and C, and that's it. That's the only possibilities there are. Well, I'm here to tell you that there has not really been a world-ending, so to speak, scenario. There's been a lot of chaos. There's been a lot of war. There's been a lot of different things throughout history, but we weren't around, depending on what you believe, just scenarioing this, of the asteroid coming in and taking out the dinosaurs or whatever took them out. Anyway, what I'm saying is when it comes to preparedness, you have the old adage that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So for you to just prepare that I'm going to prepare for a flood, a fire, and civil unrest. Well, what happens if none of that happens, but 3 other things do? You're not prepared for it at all. So you need to scenario a lot of things out, and you can get a little extreme. It's okay to go a little bit out, and you can even have some fun with it. I know we have sat down as a family and said, all right, the zombie apocalypse happens, here we are, it's Walking Dead or whatever zombie movie you want to do. What would we do? It is a survival situation. Is it probable? No, I really, on the long list of things that could happen, way down the list. Is it possible? We're in 2023. Maybe. Probably not. You never know. Whole different scenario. We may do a fun video on something like that later. But this is just another one of those videos to get you thinking. So there's more to the list that I should have added. Make sure you throw it down in the comments. I'd like to see some of your guys' list. But just go ahead and hit the like, subscribe, bell for notification. Check us out on Facebook by searching for The Rural Report. And with that, we'll wrap this up by saying, remember to remain united. We're all prepping in this together.